Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, Detective Trogdor, and I am now back from a long month of moving my family up to South Carolina, moving myself into a friend's house, and now getting myself prepared to go on deployment. Today we're going to be talking about the Rhoads Opera House fire. The Opera House is located in Boyertown, Pennsylvania, which is located in Berks County. The Rhoads Opera House was a building not originally intended for use as an opera house, located on the corner of Washington Street and Philadelphia Avenue. The Opera House was a three-story brick building which contained a hardware store and a bank on the first floor, an opera house and some offices on the second floor, and then more offices and some more municipal meeting places on the third floor. The auditorium on the second floor was a public rental space for any kind of event that people wanted to host, as long as they could, front the money for it, for business meetings, lectures, graduations, and public entertainment. Despite its name, rumor has it that the Rhoads Opera House never actually hosted a real opera. On the night of Monday, January 13th, 1908, the play The Scottish Reformation, written by Harriet Earhart Monroe, who was very involved in the production as well. During the intermission, a slideshow, which the thing was known as the Magic Lamp, was presented to give historical background for the play. Approximately 60 people were involved in the production, including stagehands and others not actually being in the play. The play that night sold 312 tickets, although there is no certain count for the number of people that were actual attendance, as people noted that folding chairs were added to the back, and there were people standing all in the back of the auditorium as well. An unfortunate turn for the play in the third act, the fire started when a kerosene lamp was knocked over and spilled out onto the stage. The fire that was on the stage was nearly extinguished when people in the front row of the right in front of the stage tried to remove kerosene lamps from the area to make sure they didn't exacerbate the fire. But they were bolted and bracketed down to the stage, so when they pulled them to move them, they ended up just shaking it and knocking them over and dumping more kerosene onto the stage, which then reignited the fire that was almost extinguished. More fuel was added to the fire when the lighting gas and oxygen from a malfunctioning magic lamp, or stereopticon, broke during the intermission. The audience patiently waited around when the first fire was breaking out, because they figured, this will be put out quickly and things will go on, because it was early 1900s, so I'm pretty sure small fires breaking out all the time was kind of a normal thing for them. They just had open kerosene lamps everywhere, so I imagine they're prepared for a fire no matter what. But this patience and them sitting around actually just did not help them in the long run. Once it was made obvious that this small, isolated fire was now rolling into a large fire, the crowd began to panic and they started to rush to the exits. Since this auditorium was on the second floor, evacuation was a little more difficult, because instead of just walking out the front door, you had to go downstairs or go out windows and go down fire escapes. The folding chairs that had been set up in the back of the auditorium created an obstacle for anyone that was trying to get out, because those people had pushed their chairs out of the way so they could get out, which then in turn made a giant maze all over the auditorium. So if people were trying to rush through, they had to follow through the chairs, step over them, or push them out of the way. The few emergency exits that they actually did have were either blocked or were left unmarked. 2 fire escapes were available, but they were only accessible through a latched windowsills, which are located 3.5 feet above the floor, which that's not very high up in the grand scheme of things, but we're also talking about people having to climb out those windows as well. Your traditional window sits, I'm looking at mine right now, looks like it's maybe 2 feet off the ground, so you could kind of step through it, whereas with 3.5 on, you're going to have to start climbing up. And these women are dressed very nicely. They're wearing large gowns, so now they're going to have to climb up and pull themselves through these windows. And mind you, the windows didn't open. They had to break them out, so people had to climb through. So everyone, the fire escapes were kind of a lesser option for a lot of people. In their panic, patrons confused the inward opening doors for outward opening doors, so the majority of the people going down to the main entrance were pushing on this door and assumed it was bolted shut, and everyone then behind them, not knowing, continued to push in hopes that the door would open. This obviously is going to create a large mass of people that have nowhere to go and are now trapped. Of the estimated 400 men, women, and children that were in attendance or were involved in the production itself, 171 people died the night in different ways, either from fire or from being trampled to death. The doors splintered from the weight of the panicked patrons and collapsed, causing the sea of people on the stairs to collapse onto the crowd of people below. As all the bodies went forward, all the people on the stairs fell down as well. People fell to their death on the staircase or were crushed to death in that hallway. Rescuers were horrified to find a pile of bodies inside the main entrance about 5 or 6 feet deep of just dead bodies stacked on top of one another as they were all trying to just get out of this opera house. Of the 171 bodies that were found that night, only 25 could not be identified. The coroner's report noted that all of the burn victims were only burned from the waist up, indicating that the people had actually just been burned standing straight up because, everyone's crushed down there. So they were all being pushed against the wall. They were probably extremely uncomfortable on that situation. They were probably, if they didn't get crushed to death there. And then the flames started rolling over them and burning them to death, searing them only from the waist up. The Boyertown Fire Department arrived 5 minutes after the alarm had been sounded and began hosing down the flames of the fire. The Keystone Fire Company would have helped if their truck hadn't crashed into a tree on the way to the fire. The Friendship Hook and Ladder Company, as well as the Pottstown Fire Department, arrived shortly after Boyertown to help put out the fire. Just after midnight, the roof of the building collapsed in on itself, and it wasn't until 4:14 a.m. on January the 14th, so the day after, that the fire was declared under control. The first body wasn't pulled out of the wreckage until 8:30 a.m. that morning, January the 14th. Harriet Monroe was subpoenaed to appear before an inquest board to figure out who was at fault for this fire, but she refused to appear. She was accused of employing an inadequately trained young man to operate the magic lamp, the stereopticon, the projector, but was ultimately found innocent of all blame. Dr. Thomas J.B. Rhoads, who the building was named after, actually had fire escapes installed after it had been built. Much to his dismay, he didn't even want them, but after enough pressure, he finally got them installed. He was actually arrested for the deaths of the 171 people, and he was arrested on the grounds of criminal negligence. I've not found anything that says that he was charged with criminal negligence. I haven't seen anything where it said that he was proven innocent. But anytime you look up a history of him, they kind of scrubbed that one out. But I'm going to assume that either A, that's false, or B, he was never charged with it, because innocent until proven guilty. This isn't the Navy. A relief fund was collected from the residents of Philadelphia, who amassed a total of $18,000. Now, $18,000 in 1908. Maybe I should memorize these things. 1908. $18,000 in 1908 is worth today about $565,000. So it was a pretty good chunk of money to help bury all these families. 3 morgues had to be set up to handle the total death toll of these people, and approximately 15,000 people attended all the funerals in one single day. 107 new graves were dug in Boyertown's Fairview Cemetery, with a common plot for the 25 bodies that cannot be identified, with a center headstone. They all had individual plots, but there was a common gravestone for all of them. In total, $22,000, which is $691,000 today, was collected in response to an appeal for contributions towards the burial of the dead. This fire spurred Pennsylvania legislature to enact new standards for doors, lighting, curtains, light fixtures, fire extinguishers, aisles, and marked exits for all large buildings, so that we don't have one of these incidents again where people don't know how to get out of the building. All doors were required to have an outward opening and remain unlocked. So this incident where it was an inward, and when everyone tried to push out, so theater houses have to have them open outward now. On May 3rd, 1909, Governor Edwin Stewart signed Pennsylvania's first fire law into effect. The building was demolished shortly thereafter because it was caught at a total loss, and a new building was erected in the same spot only 2 years after the tragedy, being used presently as apartments and stores. Ironically, there are no fire escapes on this building today. A plaque was placed on the outside of the new building to commemorate the lives lost to the tragedy on that 13th of January, 1908. One thing I've learned growing up is that this is probably with everyone where they grew up, but I only knew growing up in Pennsylvania, so there are ghost stories that come out of just about everything. And in Philadelphia specifically, and the suburbs, because it's a lot of old homes and a lot of old buildings, there are ghost stories aplenty. I mean, you get on the Charleston, and there are so many ghost stories down there because it's like one of the older cities in the U.S. But I digress. So with any kind of large tragedy, you are almost guaranteed to have ghost stories that come with it. Weeks following the fire, people claimed to hear screams coming from the site. Some residents even claimed that spirits had taken up residence inside of their houses across the street from the burned down building. One elder man had to be forcibly removed from the grounds of the former Rhoads Opera House because the ghost of his wife came to him in a dream and told him to meet her at a specific spot so that she could talk to him again. While heartbreaking, I still find it kind of funny. Whether you choose to believe the stories that ghosts that occupy the dance studio in a new building or a lady in white clothing, which is like almost the staple for all ghost stories, is a lady in a white dress anyway. The Rhoads Opera House fire is a tragedy that will be repeated time and time again, like those seen at the Station nightclub fire, the Gothenburg discotheque fire, or the Coconut Grove fire, just to name a few. Hey, I would like to thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. Please give a like if you enjoyed what I had to say here. Please give a comment if you have any critiques or if you have a topic that you would like me to research. I will be deploying soon-ish. I'm going to try to do some stuff while I'm out there. But I have no guarantees what my workload will be like once I get downrange. But I do enjoy doing research for these. I just needed to get myself back in the swing of things, so hopefully I'll have one out before I deploy. If you haven't already yet again, please give me a subscribe so we can get those numbers up. We get 10, we hit 20, and the next one's gonna be 50. So I really hope that we can get up there. And like always, I'd like to thank you for staying through this video the whole time, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good day. Bye bye.